big moment in junior high when I renounced all my Mexican friends. And I started hanging out. In those days, we called them the paddies, white people. And because I knew that the white kids were going to go to college, and they had parents that said to them, "Look, here's how you apply for college and stuff." And I wanted to be one of them. And so I figured I might be inferior, but if I tried extra hard, maybe I could be just as smart as the dumbest white person. I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that. And so I did that, and all during high school, I just, I didn't tell anybody. It was like a deep secret in me, was I felt really inferior. And nonetheless, I did okay in high school. And to my surprise, I got a 4-year scholarship to Occidental College. And when I went to Oxy, I was blown away because I saw all these white kids, and their parents all had money. Because Occidental College is like, it's expensive to go there. And their parents, the guys on my dorm, because the first year you had to live in a dorm, their parents were like doctors and lawyers and businessmen. They owned companies. They were bankers. I mean, and then my student, my classmates, they had real fancy cars and stuff. I mean, their cars, the students' cars, were better than our family car. We only had one old jalopy, and so I went through like a big crisis then, because I thought, wow, I don't belong here. And I almost dropped out of college because of culture shock. Later on, I analyzed this, that I was basically feeling so bad about who I was that I didn't feel I belonged there. And in those days, of the 2,500 or 3,000 students at Occidental College, there were 10 of us who were Spanish surnamed. Not Chicano, not Mexican American, Spanish surname. 2 were from Argentina, 2 were from Mexico, 1 was from Spain, and of the Chicanos, who were bona fide, born in East LA type Chicanos, there were only about 4 of us in a school of 3,000 students. And at the time, I just felt like I don't belong here, man. I don't, and so fortunately for me, the Chicano movement came by, and the Chicano movement said, "Hey, brother, it's okay to be who you are. In fact, who you are is a pretty nice thing to be." And that blew me away, because all up until then I had these deep feelings of inferiority. Now all of a sudden the Chicano movement comes by and says, "Hey, you know what? The reason why you didn't see any Mexicanos up there in their higher positions of power was because we've been an oppressed people. This government wanted it to be that way. When the United States conquered Mexico and took over the whole Southwest, they won Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, California, and they put all those people that lived there, our ancestors, they said, okay, you're going to go work in the mines, you're going to go work in the fields. We don't want you to get an education." And then I look back in those days, in my high school, if you were Mexican, they immediately put you into a shop class. And for the most part, the white kids and the Asian kids were the ones that got into college prep. Those were the courses that you had to take, like algebra and calculus and stuff. And they were basically saying to us Mexican kids, "You're not smart enough to take these classes, so go figure out how to do a car or go into agriculture." Because in their minds, all you're going to do is grow up to be a farm worker anyway, or a janitor somewhere, or work in an auto body shop. That's the lesson they were telling us. And I was buying into it. I didn't know any different. My counselor told me that I shouldn't apply. I wanted to apply to UCLA and Occidental College. And my counselor said, "Those are 4-year colleges. You could never do 4 years. And you'll never get in anyway." He said, "You should just apply to a 2-year college. And if you're lucky, maybe if you do good the first 2 years, maybe you can go on to a 4-year college." And so this is the counselor who's supposed to be backing you up, who's supposed to be propelling you, saying you're the greatest thing in the world. He's telling me, don't even try. And so I didn't listen to him, because my friends, by now I had these gringo friends, these white kids. They were saying, "Jesus, you're smart, man. Apply for it. Go ahead. What do you got to lose?" So they helped me. I applied. UCLA gave me partial scholarship. Occidental College gave me the whole thing, all 4 years. And you should have seen the face on my counselor when I told him. He was blown away. He was like, really? You know, and so here you are, a guy who's supposed to be guiding you into your future, and instead of helping you, he's hurting you. Had it not been for my friends, who knows, you know? And also, I wasn't buying a lot of this stuff. I was going to try it anyway.
So how old were you when the Chicano movement started, and what else was going on in your life?
Well, this is something, in 1968, this high school, Garfield, and Lincoln and Roosevelt and Wilson, all the students got organized. And there was a camp that used to be a 3 or 4 day weekend camp where they would take smart kids from the different high schools and bring them together. And it was supposed to try to be encouraging to them. And these kids got together and they started talking about the fact that, you know, they were the things I was talking about. They got tracked into vocational classes. They weren't college prep. People were being punished for speaking Spanish on campus. They were like literally being swatted if they caught you speaking Spanish. All these different things were going down, and the students said, "This is crazy. You know, we don't have to put up with this." So they found out that the state of California pays each of the schools so much money per student that's in class, and if the student is not in class, then the school doesn't get that money. So they said, why don't we just not go to school? If we walk out of the high school, it will cost that school all of our, however many of us walk out, what they normally would get from the state, the money they would get, and it'll bankrupt the schools. And so that was smart thinking. And so all these students got organized, and they were going to blow out on a given day, but Wilson kind of anticipated it. They went out it was supposed to be on Monday, but they went out on Friday. But by Monday, something like 5,000 students had walked out of Garfield, Roosevelt, Lincoln, and Wilson. And it was awesome. I mean, the people would march here. They would march in the streets. People got arrested. Students got arrested. Parents came out, and it became the big deal. And that really was the impetus, the major event that sparked the Chicano movement here in Los Angeles. There had been other activities before, but the walkouts were in 1968. It was March of 1968. Was the catalyst, the event that really just blew the whole thing open. And from then on, people really started getting involved. Going back to your question, I was at that point, I was a senior at Occidental College, my last year. And I went to my first community meeting because my sister had been one of the walkout leaders at Wilson. And I remember I was cooking dinner one day, and I had a little apartment with my roommate, and we would take turns cooking dinner, and I was listening to the TV, and there was this report that my high school, Wilson High School, had just walked out. All those kids had walked out, and I called up my sister, and she said, "Yeah, we blew out, blah blah blah." So then I thought, well, heck, I got to get involved in this, see what's going on. So I went to my first community meeting, and for the first time I saw not only older adult Mexicans, but young people like myself being articulate and smart and passionate and really talking the truth. And I was blown away, and I thought, you know what? I had gone to film at the Moratorium. I was at the time I was working for KCT, the public broadcast station, and KCT had sent a news crew to cover the Moratorium March, and I had decided that I would take at the time I had my own show. It's called Acción Chicano, and I had myself as camera, and then one of my assistants was sound, and then my wife, because I was married by then, was driving the car. And so the march was from over here on First at Belvedere Park, and it started there, and it came down Atlantic and across Whittier to what is now Salazar Park. It's 4 miles, and we didn't want to have to walk 4 miles back after the march. So we said, look, why don't we have two cars, my sound man's car and my car. So why don't we leave my car at the end of the march, and then we'll drive in my friend's car, and we'll go over and park at Belvedere Park. Then we'll march, and then we'll get into our car here and drive back, and I'll drop him off, and he'll get his car. That way we don't have to walk the 4 miles. We don't have to walk 8 miles, we just do 4 miles. So we did that, and I was filming throughout the march, and my friend was doing audio. So we ended at the march, and there was a big field there behind Salazar Park, and everybody gathered, and people, you know, there were parents with children, there were grandmothers, it was like a family event. And there was a platform, the back of this truck, a flatbed, and people were getting up and giving speeches, and there was ballet folklorico. You know, it was really like a family outing, you know. And what happened was the police, so I filmed some of that, but my friend, my audio man, had to get going to another meeting at a wedding to go to. And I had promised him we'd finish early so we could go back to his friend. So we got into our VW, my wife and me and my sound man, and we drove back to Belvedere Park. And he had parked his car right next to the entrance of the sheriff's station. And so we pulled the VW behind his car, and we were getting the sound equipment out of my car and putting it into his car, when all of a sudden the gates open and out comes this patrol car with these guys in riot gear and 6 to a car, and they're speeding, like really hauling, you know. And so we do like this because we're right in the street. They could have run us over. And it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I counted 35 cars. So you do the math, 35 times 6. There were a lot of cops that were going, and I knew instantly something's up. So my wife and I jumped in our VW, and I started loading another. In those days, it was a 16 millimeter film. I was using an Eclair camera, 16 millimeter, and so I was loading the new roll of film because I had thought we had finished. I put everything away, and she was driving, and we went back to Salazar, what is now Salazar Park, and sure enough, when we got there, all hell had broken loose. The police had already attacked the crowd, and the crowd was working its way down Whittier Boulevard in this direction, east, and people were, you know, there was gas everywhere, tear gas, and police were still beating up on people. And I started filming some of it, and then one of them came after me and knocked me down, and I thought I was going to be, you know, arrested and beat up and stuff. But fortunately, I had fallen to the ground. I used the camera. I kind of protected. I felt I was going to go like this, and I turned around so I'd land on my back so I wouldn't hurt the camera because it was a rented camera. I didn't want to pay any money for it, you know. So I held onto the camera, and then the guy was above me, and he was going to start in on me, and then he was called away because there were 4 other guys on one guy, on a Chicano, and they were just beating the heck out of him. So he went over there and beat them up. I did a little bit more filming, and then my wife was really panicked. She said, "Let's get out of here," because it was pretty dangerous. So we jumped in the VW, and then we drove around over here to Atlantic and Whittier. And by then the crowd had moved all the way down Whittier. There were 1,000 fires set that day because people were so incensed, so angry, that they had been quietly having this, you know, ballet folklorico and stuff, and the police just come in there, and there were hundreds of police with beating people up and stuff, and people were just outraged. So they just went down Whittier Boulevard, turning over, you know, cars, burning, breaking windows, burning buildings. There were 1,000 fires set that day, and about 600 people arrested. It was a riot, a police-provoked riot.